Liquorland are proud partners of the Pies Nation podcast for another season of footy. Pop into your local Liquorland today or shop online to pick up all your favourite drinks. And just like Collingwood, Liquorland are continuing to deliver, Jack.
They absolutely are. Great to have Liquorland back on board for season 2023, and they've come out hot with the online delivery, Nico, just like the Pies. So just before Friday night, make sure you get into Liquorland to pick up all your purchases.
Now, would you like the chance to win a share of 20 million Flybuys points? Not bad, eh? To enter the draw, just spend $20 on liquor at your local Liquorland from March 1st until the 11th of April, in store or online. So you scan your Flybuys. Every $20 you spend will put you in the running to win one of 3,000 prizes. So get shopping and scanning today and land a share of 20 million Flybuys points with Liquorland. Liquorland, from the land you love. Please drink responsibly. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Pies Nation podcast, where the pies are hot and the drinks are cold. I'm Nicholas Sacco, your host for this week's episode. We are at episode 4 of season 5, or episode 117, if you're counting from the beginning. And it was as comprehensive of a display from a Collingwood side as we've seen in a long, long time. A 71-point thrashing of the power has sent them back to earth and has put us in conversations we couldn't have imagined being in 18 months ago. Join us as we chat through how we dismantled the power. We talk depth and more on Ask Pies Nation. See how much Nick Daicos won our Pies Nation Fan Award by this week. Give another fan the chance to join us as part of our Guess the Crowd competition. And we bring back the VFL wrap following a massive win in the opening round of the season. 2-0 sounds pretty good to me, just as I'm sure it does for you, Jack Dugan. Just the two of us today in the studio, but I think it's fair to say we enjoyed a pretty stress-free match today, on Saturday.
We did, Nico. Thank you. It's good to be here. Yeah, the Pies have gone 2-0, and didn't we look good on Saturday? Just a really comprehensive, faultless performance from go to woe. So it's sort of strange to be talking about a Collingwood performance like that, if I'm being completely honest. But I was blown away by it and looking forward to dissecting it all today.
Got some massive topics to discuss, even though we did win by 71 points. Still plenty of talking points. Let's get straight into it. Let's go to one of our favourite opening segments, the pie that caught your eye. Now, Jack, very intrigued. There's only two of us here, so I'll be fascinated to see if you've gone exactly who I have.
Okay, so I haven't gone the obvious choice like I usually would in Nick Daicos. I've gone the second obvious choice, though, and I've picked Darcy Cameron.
Yeah.
So, look, as we all know, Darcy took the number one spot, ruck spot from Brodie Grundy last year when he went down on Anzac Day, and I think it's probably safe to say we're all very pleased with how he carried himself throughout the mid to back half part of last year and undertaking that number one role. I don't know about you, mate, but coming into this year, without Brodie being on the injury list, knowing that he's coming back, I had a little bit of concern about Darcy's position as the number one ruck and whether or not he'd be able to cope with that. However, games like Saturday absolutely blow that concern out of the water. He was immense. He had 18 disposals, 9 of which came in the first quarter, and he had 9 score involvements, which is just huge. I think he won the coach's MVP vote as well. So, yeah, for me, it's just great signs to see the big man really relish in that number one position. So, yeah, Darcy Cameron was the pie that caught my eye this week.
And with a bit of help from Mason Cox,
Yes.
just dismantled Scott Lysette like he was nothing. If only it had happened in 2018, that would have been very handy. But nonetheless, yeah, big time game from Darcy Cameron and really establishing himself as that number one ruck. You might not have gone the obvious this week, but I could not possibly go past Nick Daicos. He's the talk of the town, and for good reason. 32 touches, a game high, 84% disposal efficiency, 6 inside 50s, which is a game high, 11 score involvements, a game high, 661 metres gained, which is a game high, 2 goals, 4 marks, and tagged by Lockie Jones for a quarter, and then he had enough, and that was the end of the story. I don't know, I messaged in the group chat on Saturday, and you've been describing him as God for the last fortnight, and I've had to join you now because that's all I've got. I don't know anything else I can add about this bloke and what he's bringing to this club. I'm just eternally grateful to Peter that he has brought someone like Nick to our football club, and Josh to an extension as well, of course, but this is about Nick right now, and yeah, he's taking things to another level, and there are things he's doing on the football field that even I didn't think was possible. He's just going out there and playing his natural game, and it is so fun to watch. You leave the MCG each week with a smile on your face because you've just seen Nick Daicos deliver a masterclass, and there is plenty more where that came from.
Absolutely. It's just, we're running out of things to say about him, Nico. You're absolutely correct. He just sees things that none of the, 36 players on the ground can see, and all the 60,000 players 60,000 supporters that are there either. I mean, there was one passage of play where he kicked it into open space, and my first reaction was, where the hell is that going? Before you know it, someone's running onto it, and it's hitting them in the chest. He's amazing, and we got to see a glimpse of what his finishing ability is like up forward. Two really, really lovely goals, and hopefully, if that's a sign of things to come, it's getting more and more exciting.
We have to talk about that first goal, though, he kicks.
Mate.
Because
Harlem Globetrotters type area is that.
And Scott Pendlebury, shout out to him as well, because you had to laugh. That's all you could do. You just had to sit there and giggle because you just couldn't believe it was happening. It almost goes out of bounds. McStay keeps it in. Daicos gets the 1-2. Pendlebury behind his back like he knew he was running there. Shrugs off the opponent, 45 metres out. Arm up as soon as he kicked it. Didn't even wait for it to leave his boot. Arm was up, ready to go. He knew it was going in. Lead gets out to almost 50 points. Game over for mine, almost at the end of the second quarter.
Yeah, summed up beautifully, mate. It was a little bit of a strange passage of play because I think 90% of the crowd and 90% of the players thought it did go out of bounds, and everyone sort of stopped, which is quite strange. And lucky enough for us, McStay was able to keep it in and pass it off to Pendles. But yeah, you summed it up beautifully there, mate. You've just got to sit back and laugh and smile, which is probably not something we've been able to do for quite a while. So it's really, really enjoyable to do so. And it's so good to have a game dominated from start to finish like that. I think last year we've mentioned it a few times, we're a bit over the heart attacks and the closeness of the games that came in 2022. But this year, to see such a dominant performance and to see that reflect on the scoreboard was absolutely huge for mine.
It really was. When was the last time we've had such a comprehensive victory? Because, again, like you say, even with the fact that sometimes we get to 40, 50-point leads, there's always that little voice in our head that says they're going to come back, they're going to make it an interesting game. And for maybe very little shades of the third quarter, that's potentially what could have happened. But in hindsight, you look at the replay and we were just in third gear whole game. Didn't really want to go too much or go too hard, I should say. Tried a couple of little things in that third quarter. Yes, we lost it by a goal or so, but then we were just able to come in that last term, put the foot down, and that was the end of the story. But I don't remember us having such a dominant four-quarter display for quite a long time. Memory goes back to a couple of games, of course. There's the one in Adelaide where we belted Port by about 130 points in 2011 when they finished last. There was a game, I think, in 08 or 09 where we beat West Coast by 100 points on the mark. But there's not too many you can say in recent years where from start to finish you had faith that Collingwood were going to win and win big.
We often ask our callers when we give them a call about strange Collingwood memories they have. And while we're on the topic, the last convincing time I can remember I sat at the footy and just relaxed the whole time was, I can't remember what round it was, but it was the round before Queen's birthday in 2018. We played Freo at the G on a cold, wet Sunday afternoon. I thought we might have got them by about 70 points.
Okay, yeah.
Similar type set up. But that was, in recent memory of mine at least, that's the last time I can remember Collingwood dominating a game from siren to siren.
Let's break down why that was the case, because there were quite a few factors in our 71-point victory over the Power. We had another big run of goals. I think it was 9 consecutive majors between the midway point of the first and the midway point of the second. It just broke the game right open. And from there, we never really looked back again. Very, very short passages of the third quarter where Port were trying to make something work, but was never really going to happen. What is it about this side and their agility and their conditioning? Because we said last week how Collingwood could have played another 2 quarters. They could have played another game on Saturday after that result. They were just in cruise control the entire afternoon, and I've never seen a Collingwood side so fit. I think that's really what stood out as well.
Their fitness is absolutely standing out in rounds 1 and 2, Nico. And I think it also comes from the fact is that we've got a lot of contributors on the scoreboard. So it's not down to 1 or 2 people
14
to
individual
do so.
goal
Yeah,
kickers.
absolutely. So that comes from not only 14 individual goal kickers, that also comes from probably about 10 different people kicking it inside 50 as well from the midfield with the different rotation combinations we've got going through there. You know, we talk about the De Goeys and the Tom Mitchells of the world and, you know, how they just making such an absolute massive difference. And yeah, we put on 9 goals. Did you say, Nico?
9 consecutive, yeah.
So 9 goals, and you sit back and go, wow, we've just put on 9 goals, and it happens so fast. But I think it happens, and it seems so seamless because there are so many different contributors right across the board.
Yeah, exactly right. And it just says a lot about what we're trying to do here at this football club, and the way we're meant to be playing or want to be playing is just superb. So, again, we can credit Fly and his coaching staff every week the way we're going, because it's just superb football to watch. And what also is superb to watch is this clearance work. It's unheard of. It's un-Collingwood-like to even be talking about this. We've been, talking for the last 10 minutes just about how dominant we've been, how there's been very little flaws in our game. This is a system that we couldn't imagine Collingwood playing even 12 months ago when we first started out with Fly taking over. But the clearance work was just outstanding. We won it by 12, but the big stat for me was that over 10 goals from stoppage clearances. We wouldn't kick 10 goals from stoppage clearances in a month previously. Now we're doing it in games, and a big helping in that is, again, Tom Mitchell, who for the second week in a row had the game-high clearance count. He had 8 on Saturday, but you add 27 disposals to that, 16 contested possessions, 8 score involvements, 380 metres gained, 5 tackles and a goal. I mean, he doesn't have to go out there and get 45 anymore because he's got plenty of people around it he can dish it off to, but it's not just that work. It's his ability to win the clearances, to have an impact inside forward 50 when required. Tom Mitchell is at another level for different reasons, and he is complementing this side beautifully.
Absolutely is. I think he, along with the other 2 big name recruits that we've had across the off-season in Dan McStay and Bobby Hill, it's amazing what 3 players coming into the side can do for a whole team's structure and a whole team's way they go about things. I mean, you touched on it just there wonderfully, Nick, about the clearances. Oh, I can't remember a Collingwood side, certainly in my lifetime, that has absolutely dominated the clearances, probably not since the premiership year of 2010 sort of era. So it's amazing. And we've only gone and won it by 12, which I'm not really sure if that's a lot or not for really.
Us it is.
But for us it is. Just on the other 2 guys, you talk about Tom Mitchell having such an impact, and his stats back that up absolutely. But I thought Dan McStay and Bobby Hill probably had just as much of an impact on Saturday, and indeed in last week's game against Geelong. Dan probably didn't have the game he would have loved in terms of taking clunks and kicking goals right throughout, but the opportunity he gave to blokes like Brody Myercheck, Jamie Elliott to lead up to the ball, and then Bobby Hill, conversely, is playing that creative role down there inside the forward 50, which allows someone like Jamie Elliott to play his natural game, which I believe is leading up to the ball and running and jumping at the footy. So what these 3 are unlocking for our team is just incredible, and I'm really, really looking forward to watching it over the course of the season.
Myercheck 3 goals, 1, of course, before getting injured. Hopefully his hand injury is not too serious, but nonetheless, I absolutely agree with you in regards to McStay's role in the team. He's not there to kick 4 or 5 goals, and we mentioned it. Well, I said in the season preview episode that he might still be our leading goal kicker, but it won't be 40s and 50s. It'll be 20s, but it'll be because we're going to have so many contributors from elsewhere, and it's clearly showing. 14 individual goal kickers this week. I think it was close to 10 or 11 last week. Unheard of. It's really unheard of. And on top of that, you look at the tackle count, 56 tackles, winning the tackle count despite having 51% possession of the ball, which is the most. Port only had 34. The rest was in contention. It's just outstanding because the pressure, the relentlessness, there were so many passages of play late in the game when the match was sewn up that we still continued to press forward, win the ball back, and kick goals. Most sides would just be happy to concede, let the players just rest up for the last 10, 15 minutes. We weren't doing that. And John Noble was a prime example. What a game he played, Jack.
Yeah, unbelievable. Obviously, the pilot caught my eye last week, John, and he backed it up with a fantastic performance. He really did typify that never give up style that you've just touched on, Nick. From the moment the ball was bounced right at the start of the game, right until the last play of the game, he was just as hungry from the start to the end. And that again just goes to speak to the DNA that is our football club at the moment. There's obviously our fitness, there's our number of contributors in terms of goal kickers that we've got, and then there's our pressure. And you combine all those 3 and I'm not going to do a Lukey and call a premiership after round 2, but when you talk of fundamentals that you'd like to see in a premiership side, I mean, they tick all the boxes.
And it's not just Lukey, I think that's going to be calling it. There's been a lot of people that have started to put us in premiership contention. I think, on all the odds where almost favourite Nick Daicos is going to win the Brownlow. We're the number 1 ranked team across multiple facets. It's great. It's all awesome. But it is only
It's
round two.
2.
We do like to get ahead of ourselves here on this podcast, but I think even us, we just have to tone it down a touch. We've got a couple of big games coming up, which we'll really see where we're at. Speaking of the defence with John Noble, Braden Maynard had a couple of awesome plays. Didn't have a lot of disposals, but there was that particular one where it was almost a certain goal for Port Adelaide, and he made a 2-on-1 against his favour into a win because he ensured that ball got kept in that defensive 50 long enough to get troops back. And another prime example of what we're trying to bring in that back line. Billy Frampton made his debut for the club, pretty much expected, I guess, once Jeremy Howe went down. And I think after a few nervous moments at the start of the match, he really did flourish in that back line. He was able to take some important marks. He didn't rush with his kicks, which I think was a big one because I guess there was a bit of talk about his decision-making and his efficiency, but he went for the careful kicks, which more often than not was the correct call anyway. So I think Billy had a pretty solid outing for his first time in black and white.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. Big tick, and he was, they're not slouches down there, Port Adelaide. Todd Marshall, Charlie Dixon, obviously, are noted full forwards in the competition, and there was times where we called to Billy to, neutralise the ball or even win it back for us, and he did a job. It's important for Billy. Obviously, I'm not a coach, but it's important for him to realise that his role in the side isn't to be the next Darcy Moore. It's just to often just get the ball to ground and neutralise it. And if that's his role that Flyers asking him to play, he absolutely executed that to perfection, I thought, on Saturday. So, yeah, well done, Billy.
It didn't look good early. He gave away that 50-metre penalty for Dixon to kick the first. But again, so Dixon kicks 3 or 4, or however much he ended up kicking. But the impact was minimal to none, really, because all 18 or all 22 players on that field just were 100% focused on the task at hand. And it meant that, and I think the first quarter really illustrated the fact that, yes, we were leaking goals. We know that's going to be part of the game plan. Port Adelaide can kick 4 first quarter goals. We're going to kick 7 or 8. And that's really the way we're going to be going about things. So it might seem frustrating sometimes from the outside looking in, but I still feel like we're playing the right way. And everybody's focused. Everyone knows what they're doing. It's not like 12 months ago where there were probably a few hiccups or we weren't going to last as long. Everything seems to be coming into place. And touch wood, I'll be touching a lot over the next 6 or so months that we can keep ourselves injury-free. And, yeah, absolutely this side can do magical things.
Yeah, injury-free, and their condition is absolutely paramount, Nico. I mean, we just spoke about the importance and how much impact 3 players such as Mitchell, Dan McStay and Bobby Hill are making to our side. That can also be flipped on its head, and you take away 3 players out of this side and, who knows what can happen. So, yeah, touch wood, we can stay injury-free throughout the rest of the year.
Any other topics from that game that really stood out to you?
Not necessarily in the game, but just wanted to give the Collingwood Army a massive shout-out. 60,000 for a 1:45 time slot on a Saturday afternoon. The biggest crowd of the weekend, I believe. Just remarkable, You had Carlton playing in prime time slot on Thursday night against the reigning premiers, and I don't even think they got above 55,000. So massive shout out to the Magpie Army, and looking forward to a massive crowd this Friday against the Tigers.
Did you hear what he said on SEN today?
I did. I loved it as well.
That's just someone coming from a Richmond and Hawthorn and knowing what it was like beforehand. He's been here for 12 months and already he knows that we are absolutely number 1. No one does it like we do. So Fly just knows how to get us going. But you're right, because most biggest home and away crowd we had against Port Adelaide, which again, round 2, it's a Saturday afternoon at the G. Big Victorian clubs don't necessarily pull huge crowds against interstate sides. We just managed to do it. 60,000, no problem. Wait till we get to Richmond on Friday night. I think that could be just about sold out, which will be outstanding if that's the case. I think that was all we were going to cover from the Port game. It's an interesting one because when you win big, obviously there's a lot to talk about, but you get to a stage where it's like, well, everything just sort of happened in front of us and we can just continue to... we can talk about how good we've been for the next hour and a half. I'm happy to have podcasts like that. I think one thing I did want to mention as well, was the inside 50 efficiency, because another big factor of our game over the last in the last couple of weeks has been those awesome, perfect, prestige, I should say, kicks inside 50. So efficient. 21 goals from 57 inside 50s, 35 shots, so 61% of our inside 50s are converting to shots on goal. Again, another stat that's sort of unheard of. How many times have we said in the last 5 or 6 years that the inside 50 kicking was terrible, our disposal was poor? That's not the case anymore. We're kicking goals and having shots and creating opportunities more often than not.
I think what's most impressive to see is such an improvement in such a short space of time within last week. I mean, you mentioned last week, Nico, about not looking at our WhatsApp message at half time. And a lot of that was around shooting ourselves in the foot going inside 50. And between the half time and full time, so the half time of the Geelong game and the full time of the Port Adelaide game, we'd essentially have rectified that. And yeah, it's just a full credit again to Fly and his coaching staff. I think it's hard to find negatives in these games when you win by 70 points and you are so dominant. But I think a few times in that third quarter where the game did definitely slow down a bit, I felt like we got stuck a little bit on the halfback flank a little bit. So we'd sort of do that overlap pass out to a Quainer or a John Noble running pass. And it seemed like this constant step play where Will Hoskin Elliott would mark it on the defensive 50 and then sort of get stuck. So, I mean, look, I'm clutching at straws here to find something negative, but, that happened about 3 or 4 times. So that'll be an interesting one to watch against better sides as we continue out the rest of the season, how we go in those positions of games where we can't really use our run and our dash with our wave that it's been called, and we sort of chip our way up to the full forward line. So maybe one to watch.
I think that was a good opportunity to test that type of game style out, because, of course, we want to play the way we have been, predominantly being, like you said, the wave going forward, having a lot of numbers at the ball in the contest and ensuring that ball gets locked up inside 50. But there are times in games where things just stand still. There's not a lot happening, either because the opposition's setting up really well defensively or maybe other factors as well. So it was a good time for us to test that out a little bit, play a bit more of a possession-based game rather than chaos ball. I feel like we'll be reverting to that as a last resort, though, if that's the case. I feel like we're just going to be continuing to stream forward as often as we can. And, I feel like people are saying that they've started to work our game plan out. I'm not so sure, because they might start to be playing the way we did, but we're 12 months ahead. We're so much more fitted in them. We have all 22 players on the ground have the collective mindset of knowing where they need to be and what they need to do. It's going to take other sides a lot longer to figure that out. And again, have the fitness and the conditioning to last for all 4 quarters. So all ticks at the moment here at Pineland. We would always find something negative, but very rarely are we going to have a review episode where we're just pretty much praising how good this bloody side is. Let's get to the votes. 1, 2, 3, Jack.
Thanks for reminding me, Nico. I won't go 3, 2, 1 like I so often do. So I've given my 1 vote to Josh Daicos. All the chat about his brother. We can often forget how bloody good Josh has been for us over the past good 3 to 4 years now, and he was exceptional again on Saturday. I thought his kicking was extremely damaging. If you go back and look at the highlights, a lot of our goals and a lot of our attacking passages of play included Josh. So kudos to him. Finished off with a couple of goals and a really, really good one streaming from coming from the 50-metre line. So that was good. It gave 2 to the pile that caught my eye, Darcy Cameron. Again, don't need to back over those comments. He had a huge game, and hopefully more to come for Darcy. And 3 to God, Nick Daicos. He gets my 3 votes once again, and I dare say not for the last time this year.
Absolutely won't be for the last time. I've written votes in our run sheet. I am changing it slightly, and Josh Daicos is going to be incredibly stiff here because I've taken him out. He was 2. He's gone, and that's not discrediting the incredible game he played. A 26-2 game should never be discounted, but I had to get Darcy Cameron and Tom Mitchell in. I couldn't split the 1 vote. They both have to be in. So Tom Mitchell gets my 1 vote. He was a pie that caught my eye. His ability to win the clearances is just outstanding, and a big, big reason as to why we are winning games in this fashion. Very similar to last week as well, but I think he's just starting to be a bit more noticeable. I gave 2 to Darcy Cameron, one of the best games he's played in black and white stripes. He just took the mantle in the ruck. 18 disposals, 5 tackles, 5 marks, 29 hitouts was a game high. And Nick Daicos gets the 3. Nothing else needs to be said about that except the fans. And the fans, wow, I'll tell you what, 483 votes go to Nick Daicos. 304 more votes than the second player, which is Darcy Cameron. But of course, we do it in a different way. So Daicos gets his 10 and Cameron gets his 9. But I could guarantee there wasn't one vote a difference between those two. 304, which is what ended up being. Daicos, his brother, so Josh Daicos gets 8. Still Sidebottom gets 7. So fourth highest rated player according to our fans. I think he was pretty solid too still.
Yeah, absolutely. Still having an impact, which is just amazing. I mean, we look at blokes like him and Scott Pendlebury, and we're just in awe of every week of how they can be continually having such a massive impact on this side. And, obviously they're not going to be getting the 35 and 3 like they were in their heyday, but they are still contributing heavily to this Collingwood side, I should say.
Tom Mitchell gets the 6 votes. Scott Pendlebury still able to sneak his way into the top 6 best players on the ground with 5 votes. I mean, apart from the fact that he just handballs over his head, getting to watch Scott Pendlebury and Nick Daicos on the same team playing the same game, there's not many more pleasures in life, but that is one of them.
No, it's pretty good, Nico. The only thing you can cap it off if they're both holding a premiership cup off at the end of the year. But again, the lid is still firmly on.
Yeah, oh yeah, it sounds like it. That's for sure. It definitely sounds like we're keeping a composed view here. John Noble gets 4 votes. Taylor Adams with 3. Jordan De Goey still snuck into the top 10. He got 2. A much quieter game from Jordan De Goey, but didn't need to impact the contest at all. He had plenty of midfielders beside him that were happy to do it on this occasion. He did his turn last week. I'll let Mitchell and Pendles and Dakes take the rest. And Bobby Hill sneaks in for 1 vote to add to his last week. So the full total, Daicos has the lead with 6. His brother Josh, 13. Equal second with Scott Pendlebury. De Goey and Mitchell, 12 votes each. Round out the top 5. Cameron's around, Noble's around, Bobby Hill is as well. Every player on the field got a vote from our fans except one, Isaac Quainer, for the second week in a row, and is the only person so far this season to not have had a vote from our fans. Again, doesn't get much of the ball, but he does contribute in ways that you might not suspect. He's got that ability to be a handball receive when you're trying to get an easy or trying to get yourselves going forward again. If there is a bit of a lull in the game, he always makes himself available. He continues to make runs in the back line. Not a dominant, flashy game from him on Saturday or even last week, but still warrants his place in the side for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. A bit stiff, I think, Isaac Quainer not to get a vote in the first
Not
2
one.
games. I think he's been extremely serviceable. And, yeah, obviously we're probably used to seeing Q with that flashy type play, as you just mentioned, Nico, off the halfback flank there. But, no, I think he's been very solid in the first 2 games.
I don't want to bring this person's name up in vain, but I've got to ask about Will Hoskin-Elliott. So, a better game. He had a better game on Saturday compared to his round 1 clash. But what's been noted about his performances is that they do stand out when we are having good games. And there was no difference on this occasion. He was a great link-up player. He still flies for marks. He's still got a great kick on him at times, and he was able to hit up some of our forwards, and that's all well and good. But what he gets found out in is in the close games and in the tight-knit matches. Sometimes he doesn't get on top of things. Sometimes he gets left behind. But I do feel like he had a more influential game on Saturday, despite the tag on him that he only plays good when we win. I still think there was something in there to warrant a spot in that 22. Now, not saying that that's going to happen, and we could be sitting here in a week's time in a close loss to Richmond saying that he shouldn't be in the 22. But I want to get your thoughts on his start of the season, because there's been a lot of talk about Pies fans to say that he shouldn't be playing. Jack Ginnivan's waiting in the wings, of course, coming back from suspension. Do you stick with him at the moment?
I think you do. I don't think Jack Ginnivan is a like-for-like replacement for him. I think the one name that would have been really putting pressure on Will Hoskin-Elliott's spot in the side is Pat Lipinski, and obviously we know he's gone down with a shoulder injury. I mean, I won't lie, in the first half of the Geelong game, I probably had Will back in the VFL ready to go, but to his credit, he came back like a lot of them did, in that game and was able to perform. And then I thought on the weekend, he covered a lot of ground. He was getting possessions all over the ground, Nico, having impacts in various positions. And you mentioned it before, he is a real link-up player. And I think people do get trapped in that idea that, he's a bit of a downhill scare, so to speak. But it's probably the nature of way in which he plays his footy is that he really only is optimal when we are playing our best footy, as he is a link-up player, if that makes sense. So, yeah, it's a tough one for mine, but it's a good problem to have. I think he's just probably not fortunate, but there's not a lot of spots waiting or people waiting in the VFL that are a like-for-like replacement for him. I certainly don't think Ginnivan is. I think Ginnivan's a small forward pocket, half-forward flank type operator. Hoskinelli is a bit more rangier than that. So I think for now he's definitely safe.
I think the only way that works, if you are going to go down that path, is you move Bobby or Jamie further up the ground. I don't think Jack Ginnivan's ready to play that role, but even that's a bit unorthodox, isn't it? So I don't think that would work. But I just asked that question because I know there's a bit of conjecture about it. I know we've come off a great win. We're not trying to look for negatives, Will. If you're listening, I promise you, it's just a discussion that a lot of our Pies fans have. And speaking of fan discussions, we've got a big Ask Pies Nation for you, plus plenty more on the other side of this. This halftime break is brought to you by Liquorland, and the beers definitely taste good and they go down the sweetest when the Pies are on fire like they were last Saturday, Jack.
Absolutely. 2-0, Nico. Big 70-point win. Nothing better to wash off a nice win with a few cold beers, that's for sure. So get into Liquorland and get around it.
Would you like the chance to win a share of 20 million Flybuys points? To enter the draw, just spend $20 on liquor at your local Liquorland from March 1 to April 11. In store or online, you scan your Flybuys. Every $20 you spend will put you in the running to win one of 3,000 prizes. So get shopping and scanning today and land a share of 20 million Flybuys points with Liquorland. Liquorland, from the land you love. Please drink responsibly. Welcome back to the Pies Nation podcast, where the pies are hot and the drinks are cold. Let's get to some impressive fan comments, I must say, on Ask Pies Nation, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, you name it. We're there. Get involved. Some big questions. One of them, what is something underrated that this team is currently doing that you would like to highlight? Give us some things that are impressing you but flying under the radar. Before we get the fans, what would you say is going under the radar at the moment, Jack? Something that the Pies are doing that maybe not as many people are talking about.
I think probably our defence, Nico. A lot of talk about our attack and our midfield and our forwards, but not so much about our defence, which is a good thing in many ways if you're not talking about your back six. But yeah, they've been absolutely huge, as they were last year. I think they've added a new level of, solidarity, and they're really working well together.
Let's get through some really keen answers. A lot of people getting involved in our Aspies Nation. So many comments flying around. So let's get stuck straight into it. We'll begin on Instagram. Cody P. McCormack. No one is talking about how well Darcy Moore is playing. Has looked sometimes shaky one-on-one in the past against monster forwards, but he has been an absolute rock so far this season. Can't recall him being beaten once in an aerial contest. What do you think about that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it just goes back to what I was just saying about our defence. I mean, they're all really performing, and Darcy not only is the captain of our side, but he is indeed the captain of that back line, and he's leading from example for sure.
This is a really good one. I want to get your thoughts on here. This is Axel_Goodall on Instagram. Rewind a couple of years, and each week you could pick out at least 5 players who would be considered to be a passenger. Very often, weren't getting up in games because we weren't running around with 18 blokes on the field. These days, you can't pick out a single one. Everyone playing their role to an exceptional standard. Everyone understanding the system. Selection is right.
Yeah, absolutely. Shout out Axel. He's one of my good mates. Good to hear from you, mate. Yeah, we've spoken about it already in our dissection of the Port game, mate. Just how many different contributors we have right across the board, not only on the goal scoring sheet, but also through the midfield and through the back line.
Conker2 on Instagram. John Noble, always underrated, best of the 1%ers. Best mid-year draft pick. He would be the first one picked every game. I have to agree with that. We spoke a bit about Johnny Noble and his influence on games, especially over these first 2 rounds, has been brilliant to watch. Josephine Ann on Instagram. Bear with me, this is a bit of a long one, but a very important one. One percenters and second efforts. It's easy to notice when you're at the ground as opposed to the tally, but every single player out there is knocking their guts out to be there for their teammates or to follow up if they shank a kick. You can see loads of players contributing again after they've had their handball, uh, after their handball or kick. Heaps of players knocking their guts out to lay the shepherd for their teammates. We wouldn't be able to have the speed runs that we do if it wasn't for other players chipping in with blocks, bumps, and pressure acts. It's a whole team unit out there with every player's work rate really impressing me as opposed to previous seasons. Shout out Josephine. That's a great
shout out
analysis.
Josephine, that's a great analysis.
Ahmed on Twitter, finishing out games. Never seen a team well conditioned as this one. Massive shout out to Jared Wade, who's our strength and conditioning guy, who just keeps attacking until the siren goes. The off-ball running capacity and shepherding goes unnoticed too. The boys have so much trust in each other and where they set up. Yeah, again, just the ability, the fact that it's a team first mentality that may have been the case in previous seasons, don't get me wrong, but it hasn't been presented in this capacity for quite some time. Even 2010, there was always your one or two that you could question. It's not the case here.
Yeah, everyone knows their role and everyone's executing it to perfection so far, Nico, and yeah, that builds enormous trust within a group. So yeah, again, the lid is still firmly on, but all the signs are there.
Another praised comment here from John Morris on Twitter. Everyone is doing something, whether it's a shepherd here, a tackle there, chasing the ball carrier, or running to open up space. Lots of unrewarded, selfish things that they are doing for each other. Every goal is a team goal, and we love it. And that just goes to show about the goal spread, which is what Anthony Zaff adds. The goal spread with this team is unbelievable. We don't have a main goal scorer. Teams can't really focus on one player in the forward line because the goals come from everywhere. And that's a pretty good forward line to have when you can rely on 8 to 10 blokes every week to get on the score sheet.
Creating an absolute nightmare for opposition analysts, I think, Nico, trying to dissect Collingwood and where their goals come from because it's coming from absolutely everywhere.
Malsa on Twitter, Tom Mitchell is recruit of the year. Our midfield boys in Geordie, Tay, Pendles and Crispy are playing with sheer abandonment because Tom has taken away the pressure of clearances. Love to see it.
Yeah, absolutely. And we probably didn't touch on it before, but I think Tom Mitchell's opening up doors for blokes like Taylor Adams and whatnot to sort of venture forward. We've seen in the past couple of weeks he's kicked 2 goals in each game. So that's going to be one to watch develop over the course of the year because I'm a massive fan of midfielders resting in the forward line. They're obviously in the midfield because they're elite at finding the footy. They can do that in the forward line. So, yeah, one to watch going forward.
Want your opinion on this one too. Rob McLean on Twitter. McStay has done more than free up checkers. He's freed up Mason. He has become a force and we are actually benefiting from his work. Quick clearances are also making it easier for the real Texan. He's clunking or bringing to ground, doing what I always thought he was capable of. How good is that?
Yeah, it's been exceptional from Mason. I thought he had a really good year last year, to be fair, and I think this year, like Darcy Cameron, he's got a lot more responsibility on him with no Brodie Grundy being on our list anymore. So, yeah, look, massive shout out to Mason, the way he's going about things in season 2023.
Again, we didn't really know what to expect from him coming into the year. I question his ruck work. He has slightly improved in that facet, but it's his work around the ground, which I've come to accept, particularly over the last couple of years, just how much of an influence that is going to have. David Hoare on Twitter, protect Tom Mitchell at all costs. We've improved a lot overall, but if that bloke goes down, we're back to last year's version pretty quickly. There is so much praise here for Tommy Mitchell.
Yeah, absolutely. Key pillar.
Yeah, spot on. Tam W on Twitter, not something they are doing per se, but the whole team is just in sync. They trust, the trust they show in the trust they show in each other, the knowledge that the next person will be there. It really is all for one for all type of vibe. Yeah, I mean it's pretty apparent here that this is the type of team that we want to be, and it's showing as well. Ahmed again on Twitter, but I want to bring this up. It's just funny because the amount of overhead no-look handballs is astonishing. It's like they know where each teammate is and wants it without actually communicating to it, and that just goes back to the Pendles one. Billy Hoyle on Twitter. Will Hoskin Elliott always providing the option for the get-out-of-jail kick? It's pretty, I think, in hindsight, and watching games on replay. That's pretty true.
Yeah, that was sort of what I was trying to get on to before. He was definitely presenting and providing that outlet kick. It's the next kick that we're struggling with a little bit when we need to go slow. But, the way that Flyers Pies are playing and the way they have been playing over the past 18 months, there's not going to be too many times where we're going to have to go slow, I don't think.
Paul Balakis on Twitter. I've never seen a Collingwood player smile and enjoy their footy as much as I've been following them for 50 years. I think something special is brewing at Magpie Land. Did we say the lid was off? I can't remember if we said that because it seems as though everybody is really embracing what we're trying to do. A couple more to wrap up. Alex Marconi on Twitter. The biggest part of our success is effort. No one personifies this more than Bo McCreary, going again and again, just being at the next contest, laying a tackle, or just being another body. This man is someone I think that will be first picked every single week. His pressure and his relentless ability to win every 50-50 situation is outstanding.
Absolutely, it is. Shout out Marcus and shout out Bo McCreary. I'll better not go off on a tangent about Reef McInnes here, but no, he is exceptional, and we touched on it last week. He's obviously, we all know and love Bo's pressure game, but he's taking his game to a whole new level this year, and he's just one of those players. As I didn't catch their name, Nico. Sorry.
The one that just gave that comment, Alex Marconi.
As Alex has just highlighted there, you just love going to the footy and watch him going about his work. His pressure is I can't say much apart from the fact you just fall in love with it. It's great. I love Bo McCreary and I love what he's about.
Joel Greer on Twitter. I loved how they were getting around Billy Frampton yesterday for his defensive efforts. Also, Darcy shared the ball with him a couple of times, which will just build his confidence. It's those little things, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, for sure. And it's going to be another big test for Billy this week. Friday Night Lights. I'm sure he's fine. I think might have been an injury cloud under Tom Lynch. I don't know, Nico, but that Richmond forward line has been a potent one against us in the most recent years. So yeah, big test for Billy this Friday night.
Absolutely. I think that will be Ask Pies Nation for another week done. So many more answers I really could have gone through, but a lot of them along the lines of what we've been speaking about, just that team first mentality and the ability to get that ball going forward no matter what the cost. Ask Pies Nation, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, all of the above. That is where you can get involved. And speaking of getting involved, there are quite a few competitions we always like to run in the lead up to game day. One of them is guessing the correct margin, and I'm sorry to say that no one got close to the 71 points. Actually, I'm not sorry to say because that just means that we are just smashing teams that far that we don't have anyone even close to getting the margin correct, but that's okay. We don't need that. Guess the crowd. Did you expect 60,000 now? I mean, we talked about it a bit in the first seg.
Yeah, I didn't. 145 against an interstate team to get 60,000 there. It's just a absolutely remarkable effort and a sign of things to come.
We're visual, we're audio, we just do everything perfect, just like the Pies. Geez, we're getting ahead of ourselves here, aren't we? We need to calm down, don't we? Well, maybe we won't because we've got a guest coming on. But our Guess the Crowd competition, crowd ended up being, I think, 60,746, and 44 people away was Nick Crosby, who guessed 60,790. So let's give Nick a call and see if he's just as up and about as we are here on the Pies Nation podcast. So let's see how we go with Nick.
Hello, Nick speaking.
Nick, it's Nick from the Pies Nation podcast. How you going, mate?
Good, thanks. How about yourself?
Yeah, not too bad. Congratulations on being our Guess the Crowd competition winner for this week's game against the Power. Fantastic to have you on, as we always start with. Were you there on Saturday to watch us have one of our most stress-free victories in quite some time?
I wish I was. No, unfortunately, I was stuck with work, but caught the highlights and watched the game afterwards. And yeah, my goodness, stress-free is one way to describe it. That was excellent.
Well, tell me your thoughts then. Seeing our first 2 weeks of football in the fashion they've been played in, I think the smile can't be wiped off our faces at the moment. What have been your thoughts about the Pies so far?
It's definitely the most promising start to the season that we've seen in quite some time. Everyone looks super fit, everyone looks super fast. Everything just seems to be bouncing the right way for us. You look through some of the moments and there's beautiful passages where Bobby Hill gets the ball, able to pass it on beautifully to the next person. It's just It's so exciting to watch and see. And yeah, looking forward to see where it goes next.
Nick, just Jack here, mate. Thank you for coming on. Now, there's been a lot of discussion on today's podcast about the lid and whether or not it's on or off. Yes or no? Is the lid on or is it off?
Oh, look, despite all the positivity, I think the lid's on. I just well, I think I've been a Collingwood supporter for way too long to expect it to not to still be on.
Yes, well said, mate.
That's the obvious mentality, I think, from Collingwood supporters. As much as we want to start going on about how good we are, there's just always something in our head telling us to calm down. Tell us about the origins of being a Pies supporter from your personal point of view, Nick.
Yeah, so look, I was born into a Pies family, but then an uncle came along and tried to sway me to the dark side of Richmond. Even
Ooh.
brought me a Richmond jersey to try and convince me. But no, eventually saw the light and made the appropriate switch back, and yeah, been a Pies fan ever since.
Shout out to your uncle this week, mate. Massive game on Friday night coming up, and hopefully the Pies can get it done. Mate, one we usually ask our guests on a sort of a random Pies memory that you've had over the years. Maybe not one that's been in a big game or a big final, but just a really good Pies memory that sticks with you.
Yeah, look, one that jumps to mind actually, a bit of a recency bias here, but Queen's birthday last year, I went
Mm.
went to the game with my girlfriend and her dad and their family, and they're all Melbourne supporters, and my girlfriend and I are Collingwood supporters. And early on, they were like, kept telling us which players were kicking the goals so we could mark it in the footy records and so forth. And then obviously the game eventually turned our way, and that was a great day.
Have you been invited to dinner since that day, mate?
Well, I thought we were going to go for dinner that night, and we didn't. No.
Oh, that's typical Melbourne fans. Sometimes they just get a bit salty, but that's okay. We were able to enjoy the win, and that's the best part about it. It's been exciting to watch Collingwood this year, Nick. Tell us about some of the players that have really stood out to you as ones that you just get excited to watch every single week on the park.
Yeah, so I mean, like you can't talk about this for too much longer without mentioning good old Nick Daicos.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just so exciting watching what he's able to put together, and you just hope that everything keeps working out the way it is because it's awesome to watch.
Yep.
I've really enjoyed watching Bobby Hill this year as well. It's just been so good to have that really small, exciting forward who's real dangerous and real potent around goals. So I've really enjoyed watching his work as well this year.
Yeah, lovely response, mate. Just one more from me. Sometimes you can get trapped early on in the season. Obviously, we're absolutely flying. Do you see any improvement in this side at all? Any minor areas where you feel we could touch ourselves up a little bit?
Yeah, look, I mean, the last couple of games they've been really high scoring, and obviously it's been great. We've scored more than the opposition on both occasions, but there certainly has been a lot of goals going back the other way, and we've been able to compensate for that. Okay, I think with how well we've done. But I wonder if, as push comes to shove later on in the year, we're gonna have to tighten up that defense a little bit, and maybe that'll settle when sort of Billy Franzi gets a bit more comfortable down there, and we have a more settled back line.
Yeah, absolutely. We've got a great response.
And just one more from me, Nick. Which line are you getting your grand final tickets from, mate?
Oh, that would be absolutely legendary if we pull that off this year. That'd be so good.
As you can tell, we're taking things very seriously and low key
yes.
here after our 2 wins. But Nick, nonetheless, great to have you on to get your thoughts on the Pies. Tell us a bit about your history with the club, and thanks for being a supporter of the Pies Nation podcast. Looking forward to a great year ahead. Thanks, mate.
No worries, boys. Lovely to hear from you all, and keep up the great work with the pod. Absolutely loving it.
Cheers, mate. Thanks, Nick.
Cheers, Nick.
Cheers.
And there is Nick Crosby for you, our Guess the Crowd winner for this week. You can get involved too, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. Be sure to look out for the Guess the Crowd competition post by Lukey each week. And that could be you joining us on the Pies Nation podcast.
Mate, we've had a couple of ripper guests to start off the season this year. We could be out of a job pretty soon, I reckon.
Are you just saying that because no one's going to beat you, Jack? Because we know that you're on now, your permanent role, we get it. No, you're right. But hey, we have had some rippers. We started with Daz last week, who was up and about. We got Nick as well. So hey, could be one of you listening or watching right now joining us next week after we beat the Tigers by 10 goals. Let's head to the VFL wrap. And usually this is Marcus's forte, particularly after a big round 1 victory over Coburg. You can't get over that, can you, Jack? But he's not here, so I've taken the reins as I usually do. I'll just take one for the team here, but that's okay. VFL wrap it is, and I'm very excited because Pies a massive 92-point win over Coburg at Victoria Park. It was no problems really in the end. We started strong, and it was I think that's a 13-goal-to-1 second half was what got us over the line. And yeah, unreal stuff. Huge start to the percentage, of course. 16-point lead at halftime to then turn that into a 92.1 is outstanding. Finn McRae, 34 touches, 9 clearances, 6 tackles. That's getting you into an AFL side every day of the week, Jack, but I don't think he's going to have an easy time finding his way into the best 22.
He's not, but it doesn't hurt to take steps, Nico. I mean, we've spoken about him, I think, a little bit in the preseason and how difficult it might be for him to find himself back in the ones. But no, it doesn't hurt to have games like that. That's outstanding.
Also, some standouts. Trent Bianco, 27 touches, 9 marks, 5 inside 50s. Tom Wilson goes up forward to kick 5 big ones, along with Ash Johnson, who also got 4 goals, cashing up forward. So, mentioned last year about VFL blokes not really being the options that we need to step up when players get injured or form dips, but what a start to the year some of these boys have had. And I know it's almost impossible to find a way into this 22 right now, but they are making a good case for themselves.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a good thing to see for sure, Nico. We can have that next man up mentality, so to speak, if we are unfortunate enough to cop a few injuries. And just on the Tom Wilson thing, great to see him back playing footy. I know the last couple of years he's been battling with a bit of a serious back injury, I believe. So yeah, really good to see him running around and kicking goals, figuratively and literally.
That was our VFL report, but no one does it better than our mate Serge. And he was back again at Vic Park watching our boys get the job done. So Serge on Twitter, impressive first up win by the Pies. Great games from the veterans, Lane, Tards and Hustwaite. Good goal kicking display from Ash, Wilson and Sam Glover. Young Guns, super day out. Ed Allen, now he kicked a very nice debut goal as well, Ed Allen. Someone that, again, could be trying to push his way in, but still a bit of a way to go. Joe Richards as well, Ryan and McRae. Steen, good in the centre, Pies by 92. Very bullish on our young players coming through. So Allen, Richards, Harrison, Steen and Ryan are some that he really, highlighted from those young players. Ash took 10 marks, too good for this level. Maybe Ash Johnson comes in for my check if finger doesn't hold up. And some other notes. Will Kelly played on the wing mostly. Bianco and Murley were solid. Rusco, Ryan and Jetta good in defence. Never thought I would see today a Silvani is in black and white because Ben Silvani is on our VFL list. So you just shot us thinking about that. Anyway, it doesn't matter. Couple of points from that. Ash Johnson, best 22 at the end of last year. Played in our preliminary final. Hasn't been able to get his way into the team. Of course, Dan McStay comes in. Probably took his spot there. Forward line gelling really well. He's had a big bag in the VFL round 1. Been very solid in the practice matches. Is there any chance you see him coming in if Mychek gets injured first of all? Second of all, can he have the same impact in the senior squad?
Yeah, absolutely. I absolutely think he can. I think it's just one of those unfortunate circumstances that Ash finds himself in where the mixes that has been found in the ones is so good, and it's obviously flying the first 2 weeks, but it only takes one injury, Nico, and you're right back in the thick of it. So, we don't know what the extent of Brody's finger injury is, but I have full confidence in Ash. If he was to be called up, that he'd be able to fill that role, no worries. The other guy that I think we're sort of overlooking a little bit is Reef McInnes as well. He's been the sub both weeks. There's been massive talk about his ability to play that sort of third to second tall role, and he's made tremendous strides in the off-season this year. So maybe there might be even an opportunity for him to come off the bench and start in the starting 22.
Pies next week take on Port Melbourne at ETU Stadium. That one is on the 1st of April. Saturday night game, so 7:05. So if you want a bit of Saturday night footy, you can head over to Port Melbourne and watch the Pies take on the Borough, who got up by 20 points over North Melbourne in their round 1 game. And speaking of round 1 victories, the Pies got up in the VFLW as well. A nice little start to the season. A 15-point victory over Williamstown at Victoria Park. 3-10. So it could have been a lot more if they had have got themselves a bit more accurate on the scoreboard, but nonetheless, were able to get the job done and find themselves in a good position to start the season. They also take on Port Melbourne. It's the game before the VFL, so it's another VFLW double header. This one at ETU Stadium. And our Collingwood netballers tragically went down to the Vixens last night in big controversy. They lost by a super shot. but the Vixens had 2 centre passes in a row, which they shouldn't have. So big controversy there, but the Pies just fell short. And what's been great to see is these Collingwood boys heading to these different games at the VFL, the VFLW, of course, wouldn't have been able to happen over the weekend considering it was the same time as their game. But a lot of Pies players at the netball, which is fantastic to see. That whole team togetherness vibe is extending across all our programs.
Yeah, absolutely, Nico. It doesn't matter if you play in the VFLW, the AFL, the VFL, or indeed for the Collingwood Magpies in the netball. We are the Collingwood Magpies, and good to see everyone getting around each other for sure.
Spot on. Now, I want to bring this discussion, of course, there is the potential for us to do another Instagram Live for selection this week, but Lukey put out a question on Twitter and Instagram, and it was about Jack Ginnivan and his place in the side. Does he come back in automatically? And it was just a generic question. He wasn't expecting too much feedback, but got a lot of comments on all of our pages, and I just want to get a couple of comments put through. So think of this as a bit of an extra Ask Pies Nation, but question of the day, as he hashtagged it, does Jack Ginnivan make his way into the side for this week's match against Richmond? And looking at the comments, I think the majority have gone with no. Now, you tell me that a fortnight ago, I'll laugh at you. This man kicked 40 goals last year, our second highest goal scorer. He's someone that comes in every day of the week. Now, hasn't played any practice matches, hasn't played any VFL. If he does come in against Friday, it'll be his first game of any level of the year. Only played, I think, did he even get into the intra-club? I can't remember if he played in the intra-club game or not. I don't think he did.
No, he did because
Okay.
I remember him going down. I think he went down with a grazed knee or something like that, and there was a little bit of concern around that, but all good straight away. And then obviously a couple of weeks later, we were dealing with the suspension stuff. But yeah, I got to say, Nico, I tend to agree with the wider community there. I don't think this week is the week to bring Jack back into the side, and I say that for a lot of reasons. I think, that old adage, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. So, there's no need to rush him back into a side that is really, really going well down there, especially in the forward line with a bloke like Bobby Hill, who is just playing that small forward creative role to perfection. Not saying that Jack's not capable of doing that, but considering he has missed out on so much footy over the past sort of month or so, it might be best for him just to get a run in the VFL and play 4 quarters of competitive footy.
A couple of comments here to consider. Matt on Twitter, 2 weeks in the VFL. Doubt he plays Saturday night VFL in seniors 5 days later, unless we get injuries. So he's looking at the long term, and that would be that if he does play VFL on Saturday, Brisbane we play on a Thursday. Does he just go back and play? Again, might depend on what happens on Friday night. Interesting one here from Jay Smitty on Twitter. I hope we don't start discounting Jack Ginnivan and his natural goal sense, but if everyone's fit, nobody deserves to lose their spot at the moment. And I think that's the big one, because it's not that he doesn't get into the best 22. It's that he doesn't come into the best 22 now. Considering the way we're playing and the way we're winning games, it's hard to justify him coming into this team. So that's where the fans are coming in. So again, if Mychek doesn't play, do you bring Ash Johnson in? Do you bring Jack Ginnivan in? It's not a like for like if you bring Guinea in. So it's a very difficult one, and I'll be fascinated to see which way the selection panel go. A lot of fans do back it. Andrew Barandis. No, that's not how you say it. Let's start again. Andrew Barandanis. He says, happy to bounce in the selection panel. Sorry, can't speak today. Happy to back in the selection panel and its process either way. Tough on the player that makes way for him. Would like to see Ginnivan, Hill, and Elliott all running in that 50. So imagine those 3, and you put Mychek and McStay in there, and that forward line just looking pretty good.
It's scary, and it's already scary enough with the combination we've got going there at the moment, Nico. So I think you just used on Jack Ginnivan, you used the word deserve there before. It's the situation where no one deserves to come out, but it's not like he doesn't deserve to come in, sort of thing. So if he can go, for mine, if he can go into the VFL and prove that he's really worked hard since copping that suspension, and make a case for his spot before we just throw him back in there after not playing a lot of footy for a month, I think that'd be probably the best avenue for Jack.
VFL is a consensus, but nonetheless, it doesn't take away from how big Friday night is going to be against the Tigers at the MCG. We want 95 of the 100,000 fans there to be Pies supporters. We'll let them have 5,000. If it was Carlton, you'd be getting none. But Tigers, Friday night, huge clash. Keep an eye out for the socials. Some excellent content coming your way. We hope you enjoyed listening. We hope you're enjoying watching us. Be sure to subscribe to YouTube. Give us a 5-star rating on iTunes. And look out for our merch because it's here. The merch has arrived. And if you're wondering the incredible design of the Daicos family tree, you're looking at him right here. It's Jack Dugan. What started out as a joke could become our best seller the way Nick Daicos is playing at the moment.
Yeah, I know. I don't know if I'm taking credit or taking blame for that yet, Nico, but we'll see how we go. But no, for sure, it's available on all our socials to go have a look at least. And yeah, it would be so good to rock up on Friday night and see a few Daicos jumpers or a few Gimme More t-shirts going
Yes.
around. It'd be awesome.
It would be spot on. So be sure to head to our social media pages to find out where you can buy all our merch. Be sure to keep following us, Instagram, Facebook, subscribe on YouTube. Give us that 5-star rating on iTunes and Spotify and get around us because we're playing good footy and the vibe is immaculate at the moment and there's no place you want to be rather than at Collingwood right now. And the best place, the nearest you can get to the Pies is us. So make sure you continue to tune in. Jack, a nice little 2-man pod for today's episode. Thanks for joining me.
It's been a pleasure as always, mate, and look forward to doing so next week, hopefully after a massive win over the Tigers.
I've been your host, Nicholas Sacco. You've been listening to the Pies Nation podcast where the pies are so hot that the lid is almost off and the drinks are cold. Thanks for listening to the Pies Nation podcast and thanks to Liquorland, who are proud partners of the show. Would you like the chance to win a share of 20 million Flybuys points? To enter the draw, just spend $20 on liquor at your local Liquorland from March 1 to April 11, in-store or online. All you got to do is scan your Flybuys. Every $20 you spend will put you in the running to win one of 3,000 prizes. So get shopping today and get scanning also to land a share of 20 million Flybuys points. Liquorland, from the land you love. Please drink responsibly.